In January of 2003, a young couple and their 5-year-old son entered my law office in Nebraska. They claimed to be the parents of John Titor, a time traveler from the future. Although I've reserved final judgment of their claims, their story and evidence they presented was quite convincing. They told me of a tale about a man who used a time machine to travel from the year 2036 to 1975, and then to 1998, where they first met. For a period of nearly 3 years, this man, claiming to be their young son as an adult, stayed with them in their home. For reasons they are still not clear, in 2001, he borrowed his father's computer and began posting on the internet about who he was and why he was here. This is a compilation of those internet posts he left online. He started in November of 2000, right before the presidential election. After nearly 5 months speaking with people online, he left our time and returned to his home in 2036. When his parents approached me and presented the pictures, documents, notes, and copies of his original posts, they wanted closure. For reasons I cannot explain, they were anxious to leave Florida and rid themselves of the ties to this man who claimed to be their son from the year 2036. Today, you can still go online and read John Titor's original posts. There are thousands of websites where John Titor is discussed, and the original people he spoke with are still online. Chapter 1, November 2000. I was about to give up hope that anyone knew who Tipler or Kerr was on this world line. The basics of time travel began at CERN in about a year and end in 2034 with the building of the first time machine. Too bad I cannot post pictures, or I'd show it to you. Is there a site where I don't need to register personal information to post the pictures? I'd be happy to send them to you and answer any questions you may have. I saw the post requesting the basic systems for the gravity distortion system that will allow time travel. Here they are. 1. Magnetic housing units for dual microsingularities. 2. Electron injection manifold to alter mass and gravity of the microsingularities. 3. Cooling and X-ray venting systems. 4. Gravity sensors, VGL system. 5. Main clocks, 4 cesium units. 6. Main computer units, 3. November 4th, 2000. Q. Can you describe time travel for us? The unit has a ramp-up time after the destination coordinates are fed into the computers. An audible alarm and a small light start a short countdown, at which point you should be secured in your seat. The gravity field generated by the unit overtakes you very quickly. You feel a tug towards the unit similar to rising quickly in an elevator, and it continues to rise based on the power settings. At 100% power, the constant pull of gravity can be as high as 2 Gs, or more depending on how close you are to the unit. There are no serious side effects, but I try to avoid eating before a flight. No bright flash of light is seen. Outside, the vehicle appears to accelerate as the light is bent around it. We have to wear sunglasses or close our eyes as this happens due to a short burst of ultraviolet radiation. Personally, I think it looks like you're driving under a rainbow. After that, it appears to fade to black and remains totally black until the unit is turned off. We are advised to keep the windows closed as a great deal of heat builds up outside the car. The gravity field also traps a small air pocket around the car that acts as your only oxygen supply unless you bring compressed air with you. This pocket will only last for a short period, and a carbon dioxide sensor tells you when it's too dangerous. The C204 unit is accurate from 50 to 60 years a jump and travels at about 10 years an hour at 100% power. You do hear a slight hum as the unit operates, and when the power changes or the unit's turned off, there is a great deal of electrical crackling noise from static electricity. Q. Can you tell us any of your memories from 2036? I remember 2036 very clearly. It is difficult to describe 2036 in detail without spending a great deal of time explaining why things are so different. In 2036, I live in Central Florida with my family, and I'm currently stationed at an Army base in Tampa. A world war in 2015 killed nearly 3 billion people. The people that survived grew closer together. Life is centered on the family and then the community. I cannot imagine living even a few hundred miles away from my parents. There is no large industrial complex creating masses of useless food and recreational items. Food and livestock is grown and sold locally. People spend much more time reading and talking together. Religion is taken seriously, and everyone can multiply and divide in their heads. Q. Can you post more of the operations manual for the time machine? I will consider it, but I do not expect they are worth anything to most people except as a curiosity. Q. Can you meet yourself on another world line? What would happen if you did? It has always surprised me why that concept is so hard for people to imagine and accept. Nothing would happen. The universe would not end, and there are no paradox problems that threaten existence. Temporal space-time is made up of every possible quantum state. The Everett Wheeler model is correct. I have met and or seen myself twice on different world lines. The first was a training mission, and the second is now. I was born in 1998, so the other me is 2 on this world line. There is a saying where I come from: every possible thing that can happen or will happen has already happened somewhere. Q. Describe how your world line is different from ours. For starters, the fact that I am here makes it different. I've also noticed little things like news events that are slightly different. I would guess the temporal difference between this world line and my original is about 1 or 2%. Of course, the longer I am here, the larger that divergence becomes from my point of view. Q. What kind of car is in the picture you posted? It's a 1967 Chevrolet. Q. Can you control time travel with the machine you have? Yes, it can be controlled. However, the distortion unit has operational limits. Imagine your path through time is through a cone. The farther away from the center of the cone, the more difference you will see in the world line. The C204 begins to break away at about 60 years. This means the level of confidence drops rapidly after 60 years of travel, and the world line divergence increases. In other words, if I wanted to go back 2,000 years and meet Christ, there is a good chance I would end up on a world line where he was never born. The computer units and gravity sensors record your trip, and you are able to return to your point of origin. I am aware that research is being done on faster units with more accurate clocks. I imagine they will be able to go back farther with a higher degree of divergence confidence. Q. Does anything on the world line get to you? If you mean mentally, there are many things that bother me here, but being with my parents right now is important to me. Physically, the only thing really wrong is the number of colds I get. Q. Can you return to your home? Yes. Q. Do you have to protect yourself from radiation? I'm not sure what radiation you mean. If you mean from the unit, it vents X-ray and gamma radiation out of the rear. As long as you stay away from that, you should be okay. I keep a radiation detector with me to check my environment and make sure the unit isn't leaking. Q. Can you describe the light you see when the machine is on? It first appears as if you were driving under a tunnel, and then you find yourself in total blackness. Q. Does anyone know where you are? Can you communicate with the future? No, They do not know where I am, and I cannot communicate with them. From their point of view, I will return almost exactly at the same time and moment I left. From their viewpoint, I will only have aged more than expected. Q. Is there anything else to add about what time travel looks like? While the machine is on, everything is black. When the machine is turned off, it is the reverse effect. It appears you are driving out from under a bridge. To tell you the truth, I'm usually sleeping when the unit turns off, but yes, it does appear that the world fades in from black. Q. What's the main technical problem when traveling in time? The hard part of traveling through time is not the bending of gravity, but the plotting of your course and holding to the basic position in your environment. This is done through a system called VGL, Variable Gravity Lock. Basically, the unit takes a reading of the local gravity and samples it during the trip it pulses. If the gravity is too far off, the unit stops or reverses itself to the last sample period where the readings were correct. If there is some sort of failure, the unit shuts down and drops out to whenever you may be. Q. Are there any effects from the machine on the environment when you use it? The only real physical trace is a large chunk of ground missing from the point of origin and a large pile of dirt at the destination. The gravity field surrounds a small portion of the earth under you and takes it along for the ride. There is really no way around this. I would quite say it scoops up the ground cleanly. It sort of vibrates it loose and takes it along for the ride. It looks like someone raked the ground an inch or so deep with a small hand hoe or shovel. November 6th, 2000. Perhaps it's a bit easier to understand why time travelers do not reveal themselves. Yes, you can travel forward in time. I first saw the car in 2036. The idea was to find a vehicle that would not draw attention for that time period. Unfortunately, there were not very many suitable vehicles around in 2036, and I sold the car when I arrived in 2000. You do not rewrite history. I can only affect what happens here just as easily as you can. Why do people in this time period worry so much about time travelers destroying their world line when they have no problem doing it themselves every day? My goal is not to be believed. Most people do not take news of the war very well, but I find that everyone believes it's inevitable. Even in your own history, are not great inventions and discoveries made during a time of war in your effort to kill and maim in a new and more efficient way? No, I do not work for any large industrial electronics company or any other company. Are stock tips really the first thing you want to know about in the future? As a representative of your time period, do you realize what that says about you? You should probably know that this time is not remembered for its selflessness, charity, or ability to work together. Why would I want to talk to you? Don't you believe you have something interesting or worthwhile to say to someone in the future? No, the ice caps are not melting any faster than they are now. There is far less smog and industrial waste in 2036. You asked about the North Polar Ice Pack. I never said the environment wasn't a problem. Doesn't water expand when it freezes? If the polar ice caps melted, wouldn't sea levels go down? I don't know if there's enough ice for this to make a difference, and I'm not an expert on global warming. Yes, I realize people become hostile. I don't expect anyone to believe me, and I have nothing to sell. I take no offense by it, just out of curiosity. If you were a time traveler, what do you think it would take to get people to believe you? I suppose we could agree that no particular era in history is famous for its development of humanity, but just once, I would like to hear a question like, what is family like in the future? How does society deal with poverty? Is AIDS, abortion, and drug use still a problem? Why don't I give you a stock tip? The money you make would dilute the intelligence and forethought that a smart person had in picking the stock all by themselves. If I told you how to get rich, I would be taking money from them and giving it to you. Getting back to my proper universe is tricky but possible. Yes, another jump would take me to a different family. When traveling to other world lines, there is a system of clocks and gravity sensors in the machine that sample the environment before dropping out. It's called VGL. If a cement block were there, the machine would backtrack until it sensed relative congruity to the original gravity sample. A great deal of time and effort goes into picking just the right spot, since relative to the Earth, you cannot physically move during a displacement. Please, keep in mind a couple of points as I answer your questions. First, I am not a physicist. Time travel is only a tool that allowed me to do my job in 1975. Most airline pilots are probably not aerospace engineers. Second, let me give you an example of our position. Imagine you live in the year 1900 and a time traveler attempts to explain how a jet engine works. Even though the invention of the airplane is only a decade in the future, he would have to find some frame of reference to explain the basics of flight. Then he would have to outline the mechanics of how the engine works. As amazing as it would sound, the jet would be invented about 30 years later. Time travel is achieved by altering gravity. The concept is already proven by atomic clock experiments. The closer an observer is to a gravity source of high mass, the slower time passes for them. Traveling at high speeds mimics this effect, which equals the twin paradox of faster-than-light travel. However, this type of gravity manipulation is not sufficient to alter your world line. The basic math to alter world lines exists right now. Tipler first described a working time machine through his theory of massive rotating cylinders. Certain types of black holes also exhibit the time travel abilities of Tipler cylinders. Roy Kerr was one of the first to describe the dual event horizons of a rotating black hole. As with Tipler cylinders, it was possible to travel on a time-like trip through a Kerr black hole and end up in a different world line without being squished by the gravity of the singularity. The mass and gravitational field of a microsingularity can then be manipulated by injecting electrons onto its surface. By rotating two electric microsingularities at high speed, it is possible to create and modify a local gravity sinusoid that replicates the effect of a Kerr black hole. For those asking, how come a microsingularity doesn't swallow the Earth, or want to know details about the size, stability, mass, temperature, and resulting Hawking's radiation for such a thing, though those details I must keep to myself. Yes, you can travel into the future, and it takes less energy than going into the past. The computer system is connected to the unit through an electrical bus. There are actually 3 computers linked together that take the same signals from the gravity sensors and clocks. They use a Borda error-correcting protocol that checks the integrity of the data and trips the VGL system. I am not aware of any physical change to my DNA or aura. I do, however, seem to be more susceptible to colds. Yes, you will remember me if you want to. World lines do not change that way, and I will only become an insignificant part of your history. November 7th, 2000. I would equate the future distortion units to current jet engines. The first one worked great, but they can always make it better. The C204 unit used 4 cesium clocks. The C206 uses 6 cesium clocks. But they use an optical system to check the oscillation frequency. This makes the world line divergence confidence much higher. Yes, I believe in Jesus Christ and we pray to God in churches. There are some differences you may be interested in. Religion is a major part of people's life in 2036. Pain and change tend to bring people together and closer to God. However, religion is far more personal than it is now. There are no huge centralized religions and people talk openly about their beliefs. It might also interest you to know that the day of worship is Saturday, the day God meant to be the Sabbath day, and the 10 Commandments have been restored to the 10 that God gave us. Life is much more rural in the future, but high technology is used to communicate and travel. People raise a great deal of their own food and do much more farm work. Yes, compared to now, we do work long hours. After the war, my father made a living selling oranges up and down the west coast of Florida. My closest friends raised horses and another works for a company that maintains wireless internet nodes. Life has changed so much over my lifetime that it's hard to pin down a normal day. When I was 13, I was a soldier. As a teenager, I helped my dad haul cargo. I went to college when I was 31 and I was recruited to time travel shortly after that. Again, I suppose an average day in 2036 is like an average day on the farm. Yes, there is a post office. The internet is still alive and well in the future. People spend much more time talking because life is more centered on the community. I've noticed the same effect here when the power goes off. People tend to come out of their homes and actually spend time with their neighbors. There is a lot more personal trust and less paranoia. When I'm with my parents, I live in a community made up of tree houses on a large river in Florida. The river floods sometimes and we have access to the Gulf. Most of our neighbors make a living off the sea or in moving cargo by boat. There is a civil war in the United States that starts in 2005. That conflict flares up and down for 10 years. In 2015, Russia launches a nuclear strike against the major cities in the United States, which is the other side of the Civil War from my perspective, against China and Europe. The United States counterattacks. The U.S. cities are destroyed along with the AFE, the American Federal Empire, aka Deep State. Thus, we in the country won. The European Union and China were also destroyed. Russia is now our largest trading partner, and the capital of the U.S. was moved to Omaha, Nebraska. No new information there on UFOs and aliens. I also find that an interesting subject. Personally, I think UFOs might be time travelers with very sophisticated distortion units. One of the biggest reasons food production is localized is because the environment is affected with disease and radiation. We are making huge strides in getting it cleaned up. Water is produced on a community level, and we do not eat meat that we raise ourselves. Yes, genetic engineering is used, but it's like any other technology. It can be good and bad. One thing we did not do was manufacture more hybrid seeds. What are you people thinking? I am a Christian agnostic. I do not believe faith alone is enough to get us back to God. I'm not sure what happens when we die, but I'm pretty sure it's not a walk in the park. Space travel? We are working on it. Q. What future technologies can you tell us about? I hesitate to answer, but I'll give a bit. Hydrogen fuel cells are more efficient solar cells and big deals. Computer technology and software get much better. My greatest joy is sailing. For fun, I enjoy swimming, playing cards, reading, playing games on the net, and talking with people who live in other countries. As a community, we celebrate much more and have bonfires and dances. My hobby is sorting through old magazines and video of life before the war. After the war, early new communities gathered around the current universities. That's where the libraries were. I went to school at Fort UF, which is now called the University of Florida. Not too much is different except the military is a large part of people's lives, and we spend a great deal of time in the field and farms at the university or fort. Most of my memories growing up are not fond. Life was very hard. Simple things made me happy, like hugging my mother and father. Yes, we have cameras, more digital. Film is used like painting is today. No hologram cameras, though. Yes, we have phones, but the service is through the web. Most power generation is localized. It amazes me how much power is wasted now. Yes, solar is big. There is thought that a singularity generator could also be used, but most people are against it. The elderly are highly revered and looked after on a community level. So are orphans. There are always something people can do, no matter what. The idea of avoiding work is looked down upon. Everyone pulls together to keep the community strong. Hats are more common in the future, and flashy colors are less common. Dress is much more functional, and we dress up whenever we get a chance. I have noticed that no one in this time dresses for occasions, even when they have the clothes. Why do people wear shorts to church? We do not spend nearly the amount of time on our hair as people do now. Women like to wear their hair longer, and men have it much shorter. Both sexes shave it all off when they're in active military service. There is far less medical treatment in the future. People die when they know it's time to die. No lasers. Genetic machines and cloning organs are the new techs in the future. The Constitution was changed after the war. We have 5 presidents that are voted in and out on different term periods. The vice president is the president of the Senate, and they are voted in separately. We have cars, just not a whole bunch of them. There is public transportation from city to city. If I could bring some material thing back to your time from 2036, it would be a copy of the new U.S. Constitution. Yes, you can travel to the future that was 0.05 seconds ahead of now, but not with my machine. The C204 uses the second as the basic unit of measure. This C206 may be capable of 0.05 seconds. Q. If you arrived a fraction of a second in the past or future on another world line, would we even know that you arrived? No, you would not. But the you on the world line would. It is believed there is some sort of measurable quantum difference in world lines. I am not an expert on that, so I can offer little information. You would be welcome in my home. November 8th, 2000. Q. What is the purpose of time travel is on your world line? In 2036, a great deal of effort is going into repairing our environment. I was sent to 1975 to get a computer system and take it back to 2036. Time travel is not a secret in 2036, and I expect it will become more common. Q. Why is time travel used? Right now, it's used to get information or items that would be helpful in getting a post-World War III world back to normal conditions. There are 7 other time travelers in my unit. Q. Where do time travelers go? Right now, most of our practical missions are from 1960 to 1980. There is a great deal of research into later and future periods, but the farther you go, the lower the divergence confidence of the world line. Q. Are all the time machines you know about being used? Yes. Q. What type of vehicle will you use to go back since you sold the other car? I have a 1987 four-wheel drive. The vehicle needs a strong suspension system to handle the weight of the distortion unit. Q. Are you able to take other people back with you when you leave? Yes. November 11th, 2000. Q. When you change cars, do you readjust the time machine? Yes, but it's a function of the VGL system. A gravity baseline is taken and rechecked every time the unit is used. A new vehicle would alter the gravity signature. Q. How is the singularity maintained? I am not a physicist, so I cannot answer that to your level of sophistication. The singularities are held in an enclosed magnetic field. Q. Can you travel between other dimensions with the time machine? No. However, the longer the unit is on past a safe divergence confidence, the stranger the world line becomes. The unit I have is safe to about 1% for every 60 years at max power. Q. If your time machine is accurate to the second, then how do you choose the moment you arrive? My goal was to reach a certain date and time, which is converted into seconds from the computer to make its calculations. I do not pick the second. It's more important to have a low divergence confidence number. Q. Are you here to observe the presidential elections? I would use the word elections a bit cautiously. Perhaps it's easier now to see a civil war in your future. Q. Why are you posting on a message board? I think you're committing treason. Why would it be treason? Q. If your time machine travels at 10 years an hour, it would take you more than 3 hours to get to 2000. How can the air in your vehicle last that long? Yes, that's about right, but my initial trip was to 1975, not 2000. I guess it's a question of how many technical details you really want or feel I'm making up. We do take additional oxygen, and the air pocket is a bit larger than you might think. November 12th, 2000. Q. Have you considered that someone may find you or try to injure you to get your time machine? Don't you care about the changes you're causing on our world line? Yes, I have considered it, but it's very easy to remain hidden behind a veil of disbelief. The people who understand what they are seeing are not aggressive. Everyone else just finds them entertaining. The obvious first answer is that the only world line of consequence is my own, and I don't care what happens here. That, however, is not the case. I have shown these documents in order that people might consider the possibility. I do not expect people to believe them. Q. Why are you posting these top secret restricted government documents here? The restricted nature of the documents I posted refers to the departmentalized nature of the technical information. The manual is supposed to remain with the unit. The current F-16 fighter jet probably has an operations manual. All the information is in it, not secret, but no one wants it to walk away from the plane. Q. Why are you here? I am here for personal reasons. For a few months now, I have been trying to alert anyone that would listen to the possibility of a civil war in the United States in 2005. Does that seem more likely now? Actually, it's quite amazing to see what's happening. I have been trying to get people to pay attention for the last few months, but to see it unfold is very interesting. Before I leave, I'll try and post my report. I am curious. Will anyone be upset if Florida voters are not counted in the Electoral College because of the current confusion? Q. Do you think about the possible outcome of your actions here? Yes. November 15th, 2000. A broken clock tells the right time twice a day. Q. The car in your picture looks brand new. Thanks. I sold it when I arrived here. It attracted a great deal of attention. Perhaps that's why it was still around in 2036. Q. You sound like you're in the Army. More or less correct. Q. Your superiors must have larger time machines that can find you with. Why would they come looking for me? I'm expected back, but I will only have been gone a few seconds from their point of view. Q. Don't you worry that our government will find you and take your time machine? Stupidity and greed are fairly predictable for a period of time. Q. If you're telling the truth, the last thing you should be doing is talking about it. I don't see any value in what you're saying. Have you considered that your society might be better off if half of you were dead? Q. Why don't you tell us how to get rich in the stock market before you go? I'm thinking about it. I'm waiting for my family to buy up all the good stuff cheap first. Joke. Q. In order for me to believe you fully, I need a prediction that comes true right now, so give me one. I appreciate the position you are in, but you must realize that I am not affected in the least if you believe me or not. Q. Who wins the upcoming sporting event? Off the top of my head, can you tell me if it rained in Atlanta this time last year? Do you think time travelers carry a sports reference with them? Q. Tell me anything that comes true now, and I will believe you forever. It is a mistake to give anyone your unwavering belief, but you will find that out yourself in 2005. Q. Can anyone use the time machine? Does it have a key? The unit has 2 security systems to protect it from most people. 1, it has a code that must be entered correctly. Second, and probably more effective now, the unit cannot be used by anyone who can't add and subtract. Q. Why did you go to 1975? The first leg of my trip was from 2036 to 1975. After 2 VGL checks, the divergence was estimated about 2.5% from my 2036. I was sent to get an IBM computer system called the 5100. It was one of the first portable computers made, and it has the ability to read the older IBM programming language in addition to APL and BASIC. We need the system to debug various legacy computer programs in 2036. Unix has a problem in 2038. November 17th, 2000. It is thought that being close to a gravitational field has a biological effect on all matter, including cells. The effect is to slow the movement of the electrons in the orbit of their nucleus, which slows the mechanical and biological functions of an observer close to the gravity. Thus, the pausing of time is a local phenomenon depending on how close you are to a gravitational source. This is one example of a theory involving time shells, progressing in size and intensity around a gravitational point from all matter. The more massive the object, the larger and more influential the time shells around it, like an onion. Another offshoot of this theory is that kinetic energy is actually the conversion of stored energy in the atom as it passes through time shells in a gravitational field. November 20th, 2000. Q. If you sold your car, how will you go back? The unit is portable between vehicles. It is very heavy and requires a stiff suspension. The unit is currently in a 4-wheel drive. Q. How did you solve the problem of living in this time? I am currently living with my parents on this world line. They know exactly who I am and how I got here. Q. How did you get access to a computer? There are numerous ways to do that. Any local printing shop allows you access to a computer system. Q. With all the things you could be doing, why are you trying to find out about us on the internet? What suggestions do you have? Q. It seems like it would be hard fit in on this timeline. You don't think you could blend into 1970? What difficulties would you expect to have that couldn't be overcome? Q. A lot of people think you are crazy. I have nothing to sell, nor do I want anyone to believe in me or take some action other than people think of me does not affect me in the least. Q. What would happen if someone built a time machine based on your information? What you do on your world line is your own business. I can't think of any better way to start a war than for someone to figure out how to make a time machine. Go for it. Q. I want straight answers to my questions. I will be happy to answer almost any question you have. November 21st, 2000. All of your questions asked have been answered in one way or another. You assume I am here to start a war. Consider this. You are a time traveler who wishes to go back in time to 1941 because your grandparents live close to Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. You realize you can't stop the war, but you may be able to help them prepare for it. Strangely, December 7th comes and goes with no sneak attack. As the war in Europe rages on, Japan fails to join the Axis powers. There is no war in the Pacific, and the United States remains neutral. Then you watch as Germany begins to develop the atomic bomb, all by themselves. For a change, I have a question for all of you. I want you to think very hard. What major disaster was expected and prepared for in the last year and a half that never happened? As far as war goes, I have faith you are quite capable of starting one all by yourselves. I am hard-pressed to accept any criticism on my outlook on that subject. Growing up might have been a vastly different experience for me than it was for most of you. Personal responsibility, determination, honor, friendship, and self-reliance are not just words. We live in a world recovering from years of war, poison, destruction, and hate. Excuse me. As far as war goes, I have faith you are quite capable of starting one all by yourself. I am hard-pressed to accept any criticism on my outlook on the subject. Growing up might have been a vastly different experience for me than it was for most of you. Personal responsibility, determination, honor, friendship, and self-reliance are not just words we try to live up to or fantasize about. On my world line, life is not easy. We live in a world recovering from years of war, poison, destruction, and hate. All of it courtesy of the thinking and actions of people that live right now in the same world you do, worrying about which stocks to buy or whether or not a stranger is lying to them on the internet. I believe that hardship and challenge develop character and community. My first experience with war came when I joined a shotgun infantry unit at the age of 13. In the 4 years I served as a rebel, I watched hundreds of people get shot, burn, and bleed to death. I know exactly where I was and every detail of the exact moment the first nuclear warheads began falling on Jacksonville. I know the pain and regret of not acting soon enough to enjoy a relationship as a loved one dies of or from a war that gained nothing. How can you possibly criticize me for any conflict that comes to you? I watch every day what you are doing as a society. While you sit by and watch your Constitution being torn away from you, you willfully eat poisoned food, buy manufactured products no one needs, and turns an uncaring eye away from millions of people suffering and dying all around you. Is this the universal law you subscribe to? Perhaps I should let you all in on a little secret. No one likes you in the future. This time period is looked at as being full of lazy, self-centered, civically ignorant sheep. Perhaps you should be less concerned about me and more concerned about that. There have been a great many questions piling up that I do plan to get to. If anyone sees a question I have answered before, please feel free to repeat the answer. I do not plan on leaving this world line for a while yet. I very much enjoy spending time with my family. November 22nd, 2000. The observation of time travelers appearing suddenly in a world line does not happen very often. There are two cases and 2 points of view to consider. In the first case, the time machine does not move as it goes from one world line to another and then returns. The people watching on the original world line would wave goodbye and watch as the machine is turned on. There would be a static discharge, and the air would appear to ripple as if it were getting denser. Then it would stop, and the machine would have appeared to disappear. If the machine doesn't move its position from one world line to another world line, the observer would not see it disappear at all. In the second case, if the machine were moved, it would disappear from the viewpoint of the observer and return in a different location based on where it was moved to and turned on from that destination world line. In that case, the rippling seems to dissolve the machine as it disappears. If that happens while you're watching, it leaves you to expect it to return. You know it was moved or had a serious malfunction. It is actually quite dangerous to get too close to a distortion unit as it enters or leaves a world line. It vents radiation and has a very strong localized gravity field. Personally, I worry about that a great deal. It can be adjusted to some degree. The center of gravity is adjustable within about 4 feet of the unit. It's effective for about 10 to 12 feet in either direction from there. The vertical distance is quite a bit shorter and is determined by sensors within the unit. Depending on whether or not you are going forward or backward, the footprint of the unit is different. I wouldn't quite say it scoops up the ground cleanly. It sort of vibrates it loose and takes along for the ride. It looks like someone raked the ground an inch or so deep with a small hand hoe or shovel. The negative ergosphere scoops up the front and back areas of the field. The positive ergosphere leaves a longer area near the center of the mass. It's about a cubic foot of dirt spread out over 6 square feet or so. Q. What would happen if your device was used inside a building? It might not be as destructive as you think. Depending on how close any object is to the field, it might not do any damage at all except for the floor. Q. What would happen if something touched the distortion field when it was turned on? It would be quickly spread out over the lateral length of the gravity field. Imagine being squished and stretched at the same time. Imagine anything left after that would vaporize and generate static electricity. Q. What is the temperature around the time machine when it is on? Very hot. Depending on the power setting, 100 to 120 degrees is average. Q. What position is the car in when the time machine is on? The car is off and the brake on. Q. Can you use the time machine while it is moving? Not that I'm aware of. It's important that it remains as still as possible for the gravity sensors can check and get a good lock. The divergence confidence would be way off if the vehicle were moving. Q. Do you wear a time travel uniform? I wear a standard civilian service uniform during instruction and training. It's a cross between an Army uniform and overalls. We do have a quartermaster who distributes clothing appropriate to wherever we are going. There is a patch. It is round and has a graphic of a Kerr singularity. Sort of looks like an eye with gravity waves around it, with 2 spiral paths running through its center. One path represents the safe way, and the other is the path to God. The bottom of the patch has my unit number along with it, Temporal Recon, printed on it. However, we remove any identification and patches before we go anywhere. Q. How long will you be with us? I'll be around for a while yet. November 25th, 2000. I must apologize for the poor quality of the information. There's a running inside joke about the technical issues. If the unit has a serious problem, no one could use those drawings to take the electron manifold off the singularity housing with a flathead screwdriver. Q. What is the number 7 on your drawing? The sensor detects various parameters from the singularity. Q. Why can't we see the atomic clocks in the drawing? There is another page that depicts the computer and clock system. The technology is not new and not very interesting. There is a cutaway drawing of the entire unit that I will probably post before I leave. UFOs are as much a mystery to me as they are to you. Would you be surprised to know that there are many people who don't believe in time travel on my world line? I do believe UFOs are a real mystery, but I also know that chaos theory dictates that no matter what technology or knowledge we have, there are always unknowns. On my world line, it is known that the 5100 series is capable of reading all the IBM code written before the widespread use of APL and BASIC. Unfortunately, there are none left that anyone can find in my world line. It is quite difficult to get used to some of the communication patterns I have come across here. Confusing conversational conflict for anger seems to be a common and typical problem. Why does the expression of differing emotions seem to threaten so many people? I do not feel accused, nor was I trying to accuse anyone. Your opinions are as valid as anyone, and I do not suggest you change them because of anything I say. I never said I was here to start a war, although I have strong opinions about what a war would do for you. I am not aggravated by words. Imagine you are Jewish and you are able to travel back in time to Germany in 1935. All around you are the patterns of thinking and actions that will lead to a great deal of harm, death, and destruction in just a few years. You have the advantage of knowing what will come, but no one will listen to you. In fact, they think you're insane, and the situations you describe could never happen. What I feel is not anger. It is sadness that you cannot see what I see. I appreciate your offer for help, but I am quite all right. The responsibility for the disaster is your own, but I do not consider it a disaster. Rebirth is often painful. My world line is not unified under a single government, but I would say it's closer to a unified purpose. Isn't that what you want anyway? No, I do not have the ability to make calculations that would affect world lines to my advantage. Besides, manipulating people for personal gain is wrong. I am of the belief that it is the best to make the world line you are and now better. I think the incredible freedom you have on this world line, but I see it as a trap, and I fear the cost is the loss of your sense of connection with family and community. Yes, you can self-actualize your ambitions, but at what cost to the people around you, or yet to be born? The incredible availability of art, literature, and limitless resources is hardly taken advantage of, as I imagine the number of people sitting in front of their TVs. No, I have not tried any fast food. Thinking about where the food came from, how it was shipped and treated absolutely terrifies me. I have tried to tell people about Creutzfeldt-Jakob's disease, and it seems to be catching on in Europe. Technologies themselves are not lost by some of the older tools and techniques have been lost. I think there is more detailed information about the war posted earlier. The energy stored in the singularity is used to create the distortion fields. The energy is created in a particle accelerator. I'm not sure what you mean by temporal disturbance or turbulence. What effect would that have that would need to be overcome? When I leave, I will return to 2036. The computer I have is expected there. I am unaware of any true interdimensional device available on this world line now. I would imagine the effects of such a device would be hard to hide. Q. What foods are unsafe now? What can we do to prepare for the war you are describing? I tried to consolidate your question into a basic list. I hope this helps. 1. Do not eat or use products from any animal that is fed and eats parts of its own dead. 2. Do not kiss or have intimate relations with anyone you do not know. 3. Learn basic sanitation and water purification. 4. Be comfortable around firearms. Learn to shoot and clean a gun. 5. Get a good first aid kit and learn to use it. 6. Find 5 people within 100 miles that you trust with your life and stay in contact with them. 7. Get a copy of the U.S. Constitution and read it. 8. Eat less. 9. Get a bicycle and 2 sets of spare tires. Ride it 10 miles a week. 10. Consider what you would bring with you if you had to leave your home in 10 minutes and never return. Q. What started the war? Can it be stopped? The war is a result of faulty politics and desperation from Western leadership during the U.S. Civil War. Yes, I suppose you could stop it. Q. Are there areas of the United States that are safer than others? Take a close look at the county-by-county voting map from the last elections. Q. Were biological, chemical, or other types of weapons used in the war? Yes, there were biological and chemical weapons used. No mind control weapons, but they are new non-lethal weapon systems that turn out to be quite lethal. Q. Has cancer or AIDS been cured? AIDS, no. Cancer, some progress. Q. What would you say to the world leaders who might be reading this? Revel in your confidence today because you will not win tomorrow. Q. What do you want us to remember? Please, please wake up. Look at the signposts around you now. Q. Earlier you spoke about the patch on your uniform. You said the spirals represent 2 paths. One was safe and the other led to God. What does that mean? The safe way is the one calculated to take you in time where you want to go. The other path would take you to God, death. Both are equally accepted and anticipated before each trip.